intended.
Wake up, Private, you're in some serious shit.
Now, the Predator campaign is just an outright power fantasy, letting you play as this technological savvy hunter, bullying Marines and punching down on Xenos like it's going out of fashion. The main goal for this campaign is initially just to rescue one of your buddies who's been kidnapped and experimented on by Weyland-Yutani, but then after that, you're just trying to wipe out the remaining humans and destroy their secret weapon, which just happens to be cybernetic xenomorphs. And look, that is just so fucking dumb that it's actually awesome. This campaign is also packed with fan service and nods to both franchises. At one point, you return to the smelting plant on Fury 161, which is the same planet from Alien 3, and it all ends with a fight against the Alien Queen, where you show this prehistoric bitch how we do things downtown. For weapons, the Predator's got his wrist blades along with the spear gun, which first got introduced in Predator 2. Then, of course, that iconic shoulder cannon, the plasma pistol, and the throwing disc, as well as being able to heal himself at any time. And unlike the healing in the first game, which was a complete non-event, now when you heal, the Predator full-on jabs himself up, along with screaming out loud like he's passing the galaxy's biggest kidney stone.
Sound. It is horrible.
Plus, there's probably his most important ability, the cloaking device and the vision modes. And yeah, again, just like in the movies, the Predator can turn invisible at any time and become harder to spot, though this does seem to be dependent on what weapon you've got equipped. Along with the plasma caster, the pistol, and the disc, cloaking uses up your energy, and to stock back up, you need to grab these energy pickups, which I guess the Marines were just nice enough to keep flying around. And considering the reliance you're going to be having on the cloak and the vision modes, you're going to be mostly seeing the world here in two kinds of shade, either in blue or red. Blue for when your heat mode is activated and you're going up against the Marines, as that heat mode makes them stick out more than nipples at a wet t-shirt contest. And then red when you're going up against the aliens, as using this mode makes those aliens easier to spot than piss stains on denim jeans.
I had an accident.
You had an accident? What does that mean?
Go!
To be honest though, you'll probably want to have either of those modes on at all times anyway, only to circumvent the amount of flickering lights in the levels, which is so bad at times that it pretty much induces epilepsy.
Alright.
This is definitely the most fun campaign to play through though, and even now, over 2 decades later, there's still something undeniably enjoyable about running right up to someone and stabbing them in the face with a wrist blade. You can even collect the heads of fallen enemies as a trophy, which has no real purpose, outside of just making you feel like a bit of a badass as the Predator lets off that triumphant war cry. I really don't ever get sick of blowing Marines apart with that shoulder cannon either. That classic lock-on sound, combined with that targeting reticle, is truly one of the most memorable combinations in all of science fiction, aside from maybe Jedis and lightsabers. Finally, we've got the Marine campaign, which again takes a massive shift in tone, feeling more or less like an action horror game, primarily having the player fight back against waves and waves of Xenos which come rushing at you from all directions. It's a bug hunt.
A xenomorph. It's a bug hunt.
Given your orders by another soldier via intercom, who is very clearly a member of the dev team. In fact, it seems most of the video calls feature some really bad acting by people who clearly work for Rebellion, but you know what, if anything, that just kind of adds to the charm.
Are you guys hearing this? Are you hearing this?
Again, you'll explore some very familiar looking environments. I mean, during the very first level, you come across a space jockey inside a bone ship, and then later on, there's a very Hadley's Hope looking environment you navigate through as well. Plus, it seamlessly combines 2 franchises, putting you into combat with both aliens and other predators, like this one here who kind of looked like it was in the middle of taking a shit. As you'd expect, the Marine comes with all the tools of the trade, most importantly the pulse rifle, the smart gun, and the flamethrower. And in the last 30 seconds of the last level, the minigun. The way they tried to integrate the smart gun's lock-on mode here is also masterfully executed, and it works without feeling like it's putting the game into easy mode, still requiring some basic game sense and awareness of the player. And even those bigger weapons, like the rocket launcher, make a worthwhile addition to any self-respecting Marine's arsenal. You light the way with your night vision mode and flares, and incoming threats are picked up on your motion detector, giving off that trademark beat, which increases in pitch as something closes in on position.
12 meters. 11. 10.
And it all just feels like a massive love letter to the films.
Let's rock!
first level gives you a bit of time to get acclimatized to how movement feels, along with the basics of interacting with the environment, but then after that it becomes absolutely relentless, and rarely do you get a moment to even catch your breath, because almost every mission as the Marine has you going around flipping switches and turning valves, but throughout all of this you're being constantly attacked by the Xenos. And it's kinda like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while someone's throwing a bunch of rocks at your face. The music reflects this as well, and mere seconds after loading in, you get these really loud and thumping soundtracks that just keep going until you finally make it to the end. The third mission in this campaign is the reason why I could never beat this game as a kid until that Gold Edition came out. Yeah, you see, some people might remember that there were originally 2 versions of the game, the first one back in 1999 and then the Gold Edition in 2000, and it wasn't until that Gold Edition that they added in manual save points. I mean, just try to consider that in the original you had to beat entire missions in one go, and that's a pretty tall order, man, considering the length of some of these and the placement of things like face huggers in dark corners. So overall, it's definitely the hardest campaign out of all 3. But really what you'd expect and hope for when you're playing as the character that's really the lowest down on the food chain. The final boss for this campaign is against the Alien Queen, which is a direct homage to the final scene from Aliens, where you need to blow the goddamn thing out of the airlock. You can even hide in the nearby vents to avoid it like Newt did. So yeah, it's a fun and terrifying campaign, and although you could probably pick all 3 of these campaigns to pieces if you really want to, I think overall they're a great example of something being a sum of its parts. Because I just can't think of any other game we got from back then, FPS especially, that gave you 3 vastly different experiences to play through. And the relatively short length for all of them is actually to their benefit, encouraging replays and trying to get through each mission as cleanly as possible. I still remember how scared I got playing through that Marine campaign as a 13-year-old, which directly contrasted with how I felt when I was playing as the Predator, and then the sick glee that I got from decapitating defenseless Weyland-Yutani employees as the Alien. Its legacy lives on in the insanely fun multiplayer mode with both co-op and deathmatch maps, which are still really accessible and hilarious to play through with friends. Oh, that's a one-hit kill, baby! The fact that online servers for countless AAA games have somehow been taken down throughout the years, but then the fact you can easily get a match going with an even older game like this really shows how much the industry has declined since 1999. Yeah, nice shot. If Half-Life hadn't have come out around the same time period and stolen all of the limelight, well, we'd probably hear people talking about this one way more than we currently do. Still though, that cult status is well deserved, and people with the patience to install it and check it out won't be disappointed. Right, so at this point the series left the hands of Rebellion and found its way to the crazy uncle of FPS developers with Monolith Productions, with what a lot of people believe to be the best game in the franchise, and in some ways they wouldn't be wrong. AVP2 was released in 2001, again exclusively from Microsoft Windows, running on the Liftech engine, previously used in such titles as No One Lives Forever, Blood 2, and Shogun Mobile Armavision. And yeah, you guessed it, again having 3 campaigns, playing as the Alien Marine Predator. Instead of it just being 3 separate storylines though, now all 3 characters are more or less connected, moving to the same locations and at key points even crossing paths directly, with it mostly being set around a Weyland-Yutani research station on the planet of LV-1201.
Man, my luck never changes.
It's got that whole Half-Life opposing force vibe going on, and it definitely helps in making it feel like you're taking part in this larger overarching storyline. Each campaign has its own main antagonist as well. With the Alien, it's a guy named Eisenberg, not to be confused with Heisenberg, and this guy is responsible for all the research getting carried out on the Xenos. For the Predator, it's General Rykov, a soldier who had a run-in with the Predator decades earlier, and then for the Marine, it's kind of like a combination of both, as they deal with the corruption inherent at Weyland-Yutani. And in a lot of ways outside of the story, AVP2 is really just an objective improvement across the board. I mean, for starters, it looks a hell of a lot better and has proper cinematics, with dialogue and key characters given their own motivations and agendas, some of which are actually kind of interesting to sit through, even if they are a bit wooden and everyone looks like mannequins with working eyelids.
We should move inside.
This time during the Alien campaign, you get to experience an entire life cycle, starting off as a facehugger brought to the planet for research purposes, and then in a gross display of worker incompetence, it gets released from the egg. Yeah, put that one on Fail Army. As a facehugger out to make it in the big bad world, you're then sneaking through vents and hiding in the shadows, avoiding nearby humans until you find some poor solitary asshole just trying to get in a bit of shut-eye who ends up becoming the perfect host. The second chapter begins with you literally chomping your way out of this guy's chest in real time, which is still one of the most metal sequences of all time. Then after that, you evolve into the drone form we all know and hate, and have to make your way back to the hive to save the queen. God save the queen. Oh man, I can't say that anymore.
Squad 4, report please.
Thankfully, because Xenos haven't learned how to handle pulse rifles just yet, your main method of attack is still the claws and the tail combo. Movement speed's also been significantly reduced since the first game, which is one of the many ways here it feels like it's been balanced around the multiplayer mode, but in lieu of this you've now got like a jump attack, which has the added benefit of instantly jibbing anything you come into contact with. It's again the shortest campaign out of all three, coming in at maybe like 90 minutes or so, but it's a campaign that pretty much just never lets up. And it's a sickeningly fun power fantasy running around ambushing soldiers and bullying innocent scientists. You're having to kill a few predators along the way. Awesome. Now, the Marine campaign ain't just the best Marine campaign in the series, it's probably one of the best horror-based FPS campaigns of all time, and the pacing throughout the first couple of missions alone is just masterful, not even introducing any enemies for about 20 or so minutes. You're playing as Corporal Frosty Harrison, serving aboard the USS Verloc, and you're sent to the planet to investigate the research colony and find out why it's had its communications knocked out. Yeah, sounds familiar.
All we know is that there's still no contact with the colony, and that the xenomorph may be involved.
I don't like this one bit.
This is definitely the most narrative and story-driven campaign out of all three, with quite a bit of time here spent getting us familiar with Harrison's buddies, Jones, Duke, Sergeant Hall, Major Kane, and Pilot Johnson, voiced by Jen Taylor.
Not much to work with, sir.
Who is doing the absolute worst Cockney accent I think I've ever heard in my life, to the point that I've got to assume she's doing this as some kind of practical joke.
What'll it take to get airborne?
A landing beacon and wind shear data for a start. Plus the ship's a little beat up. The stabilizer's jammed. I can fix it, but it'll take me an hour or so. The antenna's fine.
She also voices Tomiko, a scientist who aids Harrison along the way and helps him escape the planet.
You'd better.
But you're still very much on your own for most of the time here, and after crashing in that dropship, you're separated from the rest of the squad when a roof caves in, at which point the Marines almost instantly assume that Harrison's dead, like at an alarming rate.
We have to assume he won't make it.
Then soon becomes obvious that you're getting hunted by a predator, seeing the remains of its gruesome work and observing far too many random explosions and odd occurrences for it to just be coincidence. I mean, that is to say, I don't think trucks usually roll down hills and explode like that. After this, you're then tasked with getting a beacon online so the rest of the Marines can land safely, which involves navigating through some very dark and claustrophobic environments, with a really cheeky jump scare where the level designer knew exactly what he was doing.
Major, looks like the generator has been reset.
Then you reunite with your squad, but only for like a brief moment, because now you're sent off to an entirely new area to reactivate your security grid, which involves moving through more pitch black environments and coming across the signs that you've missed one hell of a find. Then it's at this point, finally, when you're attacked by the Xenos, and yeah man, talk about going from the frying pan and right into the fire. Because you go from moving through these completely innocuous environments to having to move through a vent system and getting ambushed from all sides.
Falling back in full order, sir. It's really haunted. Prep for liftoff. Harrison, you got 2 minutes.
What comes next is the best mission in the game, where you have to head into an alien hive all alone to rescue Sergeant Hall. And this whole area is still incredibly unsettling to play through. You might notice too that as soon as you enter, the background music cuts out completely, leaving you with just the soft buzzing and beeping of your motion tracker. When you finally find Hall, she's in the kind of condition you'd expect her to be in, and about all you can do at that point is mercy kill her and then haul ass, running backwards like you're playing Serious Sam and hightailing it to the APC with every Xeno in the near vicinity trying to stop you. And this is just the first half hour of the campaign. Later on, it switches up gears again, slowing down a bit as it deals with the corruption at Weyland-Yutani before you've got a finale inside the alien hive. So yeah, overall it's a lot different to the last game, which really just had you running around frantically pretty much the entire time with barely any moments to even catch your breath. What I really like too is how they've added in those tools of the trade that we first saw in Aliens, a lot of which were missing from the 1999 game, like the welding torch and the bypass tool. The shoulder lamp's also been introduced, and flares are no longer infinite. You do, however, get absolutely inundated with weapons in this one. Obviously, you've got those returning champions like the pulse rifle, the smart gun, flamethrower, and the minigun, both of which are just amazing, by the way. But they even find a way to throw in more weapons, like one of the best shotguns of all time, a grenade launcher, a rocket launcher, and even a sniper rifle. It is almost like too many weapons though, and some of these are definitely designed with the multiplayer mode in mind. The other thing is that some of the weapons kind of cancel each other out. I mean, the flamethrower looks and sounds great and is really effective, but then again, so is the pulse rifle, smart gun, and the shotgun. The grenade launcher might have like 5 different ammo types, but you don't ever really need to use them anyway. And I would have used the minigun more if I actually could, but once again, you only get it within the last 10 minutes of the campaign. I know it's kind of a weird complaint to make here that there's too many guns and that they're so good to use, but something that Monolith Productions are really masters at. And go and look at the amount of weapons they crammed into Blood 2, Shogo, and No One Lives Forever, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Combat is still fast and terrifying though, and Xenos come at you with even more startling speed than the first game. One of the coolest things here is how you can see their acid blood spray off in different directions when you shoot them. And what I thought was even more awesome was how if you shoot an alien's legs off, you'll see them crawl along the ground using their arms. It's just a really enjoyable and hardcore shooter, and the campaign is again ridiculously intense at times. It's kind of amazing, man, how something this old can still serve its purpose in scaring the absolute piss out of you. You know, as in, piss is gonna leave your body. Not to mention, it's also got some hilarious physics back from the good old days when you could be killed in an FPS game by simply standing near a closing door. And then finally we've got the Predator campaign, which, to be honest, kind of sits somewhere at the bottom for me. And the simple explanation for why I don't like this one as much anymore is that it just isn't as much of a power fantasy now. This campaign really tries to tell a story here about how the Predator you're playing as, formerly known as Prince, that's actually his title, is pursuing an old adversary who just happens to be General Rykov. Prince is on the planet also responding to the distress signal, and he soon learns that Rykov is alive. But that's not the issue. The issue is in the way that the game doles out your weapons and the pacing of each chapter. Now in the first game, you more or less had